Everyone in Umuazu loved her bananas. Sweet, fresh, and unlike any other in the market. But none of them knew where they truly came from. Every bite brought them closer to a secret too dark to imagine. If only they knew what she sells to them as banana. Welcome to African Tales by Golden, a home of interesting African stories. Long ago, in the quiet village of Umuazu, the people lived by traditions older than the oldest tree in their land. Among them was one cruel law, a law that mothers feared more than death itself. It was said that any woman who gave birth to twins must never keep them. For generations, they believed twins were not human, but messengers from the gods, and to keep them was to invite disaster. So whenever a woman bore twins, the villagers would weave a beautiful basket, line it with soft leaves, and place the babies inside. With drums and chants, they would carry the basket to the sacred river of Idemili and drop it upon the flowing water. They believed the river carried the twins to the gods, a sacrifice to keep the land fertile and prosperous. And so, for years, the cries of newborn twins were swallowed by the river. No one dared to question it until Oluoma. For 10 long years, Oluoma had been married to Mr. Joseph, a kind farmer who loved her deeply. But their joy was incomplete because her womb had never known the laughter of a child. Every month that passed brought whispers from neighbors. She's cursed, some said. She offended the gods, others murmured. But Joseph always comforted her. My love, he would whisper. The same God who gives orders will remember us too. Still, Oluoma cried every night, her tears soaking her pillow until sleep carried her pain away. One scorching afternoon, while she was cooking lunch for her husband, Oluoma suddenly felt her head spin. The wooden spoon slipped from her hand. Before she could call for help, the world went dark. Oluoma, Joseph shouted, rushing into the kitchen. He caught her just before she hit the floor and carried her into their small bedroom. Moments later, the village doctor arrived, an old man with wrinkled hands and sharp eyes. He placed his ear against her belly, nodded slowly and smiled. Congratulations, Mr. Joseph, he said. Your wife is 2 months pregnant. Joseph froze, his mouth open. What did you just say? The doctor chuckled. I said she will soon be a mother, and you're going to be a father. Joseph's shout echoed through the compound. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. After 10 years, he knelt beside his wife, tears of joy streaming down his face. When Oluoma woke up and heard the news, she wept. This time not from sorrow, but from overwhelming happiness. Her dream had finally come true. 9 months later, the night of her labor arrived. The sky rumbled with thunder, and rain poured heavily, as if heaven itself was watching. Oluoma screamed in pain, while midwives surrounded her, chanting and praying. After hours of struggle, the cries of 2 babies filled the room, a boy and a girl, beautiful, perfect twins. Oluoma's heart swelled with love as she looked at their tiny faces, but the midwives exchanged fearful glances. This is an abomination, one whispered. These children cannot live. Another muttered, stepping back. Oluoma's smile vanished. Her body trembled. She knew what would happen next. She clutched her babies tightly, her tears falling on their soft cheeks. Not my children, please, she sobbed. Outside, thunder rolled again, as though the gods themselves were angry. Mr. Joseph stood silently, staring at his newborns, his heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. After 10 years of waiting, joy had finally come, but in a form the village would never accept. And that night, as the rain fell without mercy, the couple stayed awake, holding their babies close, praying that dawn would never come. Dawn came pale and tremulous over Umuazu. The night's rain had washed the red earth clean, but it could not wash away the old law that ruled the village like an iron tooth. By the time the sun rose, drums were beaten in the compound of Ola and Joseph, low measured strokes that called the elders and the people to judgment. Word spread faster than smoke. The elders marched to the little hut where Oluoma still lay exhausted from labor. The newborn twins wrapped to her chest, Their faces were cast from duty and fear. Oluoma intoned Elder Nnamdi, voice flat as dried palm leaf. You know our law. Twins are an omen. They must be returned to the river. Please, my elders, Oluoma begged, her voice thin as straight. She sat up and held the babies closer, rocking them like a shield. God has remembered me after 10 years. Please don't take them away. Don't take my children, please. The men exchanged glances, and one by one, their faces hardened. We cannot change the way of our forefathers for one woman, Elder Nnamdi said. The safety of Umazu comes before one mother's joy. Hands that had patterned children now gripped the woven basket with the same motion used for the ceremony. Women from the compound, faces a mixture of pity and resolve, walked quickly. Their fingers practiced as if they had done this many times. They lined the basket with soft leaves and folded the babies inside, humming the old songs that made the heart obedient. Oloma's cries tore through the morning. Her pleas bounced off the mud walls and touched roofs, but no hand reached for the basket. Joseph stood frozen, one hand on the doorpost, the other clasping grip as though it were a talisman. When the procession left, drums beating, the villagers chanted and walked toward the sacred river of Idemili. From the bank, they sang to the water, a lullaby and an offering. The baskets were set afloat. The villagers watched until the current swallowed the tiny form and carried it beyond sight. Oloma's voice followed them, half prayer, half a woman losing her mind. No, not my old children, please. Her feet would have followed, but many hands held her back. Tradition had iron teeth. The villagers left, satisfied the law had been kept. The sky brightened as if to reward their obedience, but night had not yet dawned with Oluoma, alone at the river bank. As the last of the drums faded, a wild burning thought came to her. If the river had taken the babies, then the river could also give them back. Maybe, perhaps, if she moved faster than grief. She could not bear the idea of the tiny faces disappearing into legend. Love made her forget caution. She grabbed a canoe and pushed into the river, even as the sun climbed. The river was cold and swift. It whimpered of secrets. For hours, she searched by moonlight, and fever stung hope. And when the moon rose, pale and startled, she saw them, the small baskets, bobbing like a yellow flower. Her hands closed on the woven ring, and she pulled them in as if pulling life itself out of the water. They were alive, warmed by the river's strange kindness. Oluoma pressed them to her chest and wept until she could not tell which tears were hers and which were the river's. She crept back into the village under the cover of night, hiding the infants beneath the folds of her wrapper and the loose starch of their huts. She carried the twins in her arms, so happy. I thought I lost you, sweet babies. When Joseph saw them, when real trembling babies were handed into his arms, something in him that had been hollow for 10 years filled. What have you done? He breathed, not in anger, but in the stunned awe of a man who had been granted impossible mercy. We'll hide them here, Oluoma whispered, smile buckling under fear. No one will know. We'll feed them, raise them. We will give them names and tell them stories. We will keep them safe. For the night, the family tasted solemn joy. Joseph's laughter, rusty from disuse, came back like a falcon returning to purchase. He rocked one child. Oluoma hummed a lullaby with new words. The hut smelled of cassava and stolen happiness, but the village is a place that listens with many ears. That night, a group of youths burst through the door like a sudden storm, faces contorted with righteous fury. 2 women, Uzoma among them, someone who had once shared bread with Oluoma, stepped forward, eyes dry, voice steady. Oluoma, give the babies back, Uzoma said as if reading from a scroll of law. We saw you bring them back. How could you take what the river took? Why would you get to keep your babies when other women had thrown their own in the river? How dare you keep what the gods claimed? Oluoma flung herself between them and the cradle. No, please, I could not let them die. I just could not. How could you, Uzoma? Oluoma screamed. You were supposed to be my friend. You know the rules, Uzoma said cold. We followed them. You know. Hands that had once clasped in friendship now pushed. The youths wrenched the babies from their mother's arms. Cold panic bruised Joseph's face. Before Oloma could launch, the same practiced hands placed the infants back into the baskets, and the procession that had been broken that night resumed with a fury none expected. They walked to the river once more, and this time no one spared a look for Oloma's tearing throat. The basket was lowered. The current took them. The chants rose like a blade sealing a wound. When the last ripple swallowed the basket, Oloma fell to the ground as if struck. Elder Nnamdi stepped forward then. The authority that had driven the village for generations like a slow, relentless tide. "You and your husband have defiled our tradition," he declared. "For this crime, you bring shame to Umuazu. The punishment is exile. Return on the punishment of death," he intoned. The old phrasing sounds like a sentence carved from stone. Joseph collapsed to his knees and begged, voice raw, "Please, my elders, have mercy. We have lost all already. Our hope, our children. Do not take everything from us. Mercy is a fragile thing in a place that fears the gods." The elders would not be moved. They turned their faces away and pointed to the path that led from the village into the thick unknown forest. With nothing left to anchor them, Oloma and Joseph were forced to leave the only home they had ever known. They wandered without direction, the trees closing like questions around them. There's blood, food ranting. The nights were full of animal cries and the uncomfortable company of silence. Once, Joseph tried to hunt to feed them. Once, he brought down a small bush buck, and for a moment they ate like kings. But on the third night, fate, or the forest's own vengeance, struck in the form of a snake. He did not cry out loud. By the time Oloma reached him, hands fumbling for the life she could not hold, the serpent's venom had done its work. Joseph's face, once so warm and full of future, went slack. He whispered her name once, and then he was gone. The forest that had given them shelter had taken their last man. Alone in the dark, with the babies gone and the husband dead, Oloma's grip blossomed into something hotter and darker. Fury. The country of her mind narrowed to a single line. The faces of the elders, the chants of the river. She wept until her body knew no more tears. Hunger gnawed at her bones. The green leaves rustled like voices. She wanted only one thing, a justice that matched the cruelty done to her. Unknown to her, the forest she was in is the evil forest, a place parents used to warn children about with sticks and stories. A presence moved between the trunks, not quite shadow, not quite person. It watched her with an old patience. The air around it tasted of iron and old promises. A voice slid from between the trees, smooth and waiting. "Oluoma, I can see your pain, and I can see your fury. You want revenge, right?" Oloma looked up and screamed, "Who is there? Show yourself." From the gloom stepped a figure that was both beautiful and terrible. An angel whose wings were not white, but the color of midnight, whose smile held the slow knowing of someone who had been wronged and had learned how to turn wrong into power. "I am the angel of darkness," it said, voice like silk dragged across glass. "I have watched Umazu for longer than your elders have had it. I too have felt the knife of tradition. I saw my own children set adrift. I understand the shape of your pain." Oloma, hollow and raw, could only stay. "What do you want with me?" "Revenge," the angel of darkness answered simply. "Not the slow petty revenge of gossip and poison. A swifter, cleaner thing. I can give you what you need to make them remember you, not as the woman who begged, but as the woman they must fear." Her throat tightened. "How? How can you help a poor woman who has nothing?" The angel of darkness stepped closer. Its eyes held a promise that smelled like thunder. "Don't worry. You will learn everything in time. Come, let's find you something to eat." As they walked deeper into the forest, the trees seemed to lean close and listen. 20 years had softened the angles of Umuazu, and the village that once Oloma knew had new roads, new names. When Oloma came back, the woman they once scorned was gone. In her place walked a stranger, poised, beautiful, and dressed as if the world owed her respect. No one recognized the widow who had staggered into the evil forest 2 decades earlier. She rented a small apartment by the market and rested from the long journey. At dawn, a neat basket sat on her doorstep. It filled with large yellow bananas. The words the angel of darkness had taught her echoed in her memory like an incantation. She prepared herself and went to the market, opened a tiny store, and arranged the fruits on a rough wooden table. "Buy your banana," she sang, voice slow and sweet. The market answered. Women from the stalls, curious, hungry, tired of the same old taste, came first. They bit into Oloma's bananas and stopped, stunned. "This tastes different," one woman gasped. "It's sweeter, softer. It gives me strength." Word moved faster than a running child. Before the sun reached noon, people came from every corner. Farmers who wanted energy for the fields, mothers who wanted strength for the markets, men who wanted a quick vigor of the day. Even Mame Kini, the largest and oldest banana seller in Umuazu, watched from her store as customers drifted away and trooped instead to the stranger with glittering fruits. Oloma smiled and sold every single banana at cheap prices and went home with empty baskets and a quiet fear and satisfaction. The next morning, more bananas appeared. The day after, even more. For days, the market paused with a new taste. The village adopted them into its routine. A banana with morning tea, one before work, one after the meal. Bananas became the new small mercy. Then the strange thing happened. Men woke up one morning with a bewildering and terrible emptiness. They spoke of it in hushes at the palm wine stand, at the well, under the shade of the Iroko. "I woke up and I can't find my manhood anymore." Amadi told his friend. "Even Mieze, what happened to our manhood?" Another answered, with a voice that trembled beyond shame. Conversation that used to begin with a laughter now began with a search for words to name a private ruin. Day by day, more men discovered the same thing. Their manhoods had vanished by dawn. Nights were as ordinary as ever. Mornings came with a silent, spreading panic. At the same time, new wombs stayed silent. For 2 long years, there were no newborn cries in Umuazu. Women who once whispered of pregnancies now stared at empty cradles. Fear wrapped itself around the village like a creeping vine. No one connected the dots, not at first. They kept eating the fruit from Oloma's stall, delighted by its sweetness, unaware that it is the root cause of their problem. If only they know that they were eating their manhood as bananas. The angel of darkness moved under moonlight. Each night, the angel of darkness crept from hut to hut, gathering what it wanted, the men's manhood, and transformed it into bright, fresh yellow bananas. Oloma collected them. Her face, the marks of a woman who had waited 20 years for this slow, cold revenge. 2 winters passed like this, and as the problem grew, so did the rumors and the dread. At last, the elders could not ignore it. They gathered in the king's palace, a circle of worried faces, hands knotted with old authority. The king's voice was rough with fear. For 2 years, there has been no new cry of baby in Umuazu, he said. Our men wake up to find themselves with no manhood. How will our wife get pregnant? How will the new generation be born? This is a very serious matter. We have to do something about it before this village will be all but lost. With no heir or newborn baby of the new generation, this village will be doomed. We need to find a solution very fast. The elders nodded in agreement. But what do we do, my king? One of the elders asked. Our chief priest is there trying to find a solution to these problems few months ago. Who do we call now? We must call the river goddess of Idemili, proposed one elder with trembling certainty. Only she answers for matters of life and seed. The king's jaw tightened. He knew what petitioning the river demanded. The old covenant, deep as the riverbed, had a terrible price. What will she ask for? The king breathed. The rites require sacrifice, Elder Eze said plainly. 2 virgins must be offered to wake the goddess. Only then might she return our men and our children. A hush fell so heavy it pressed the roofs inward. How do we sacrifice our own people to save our people? One elder asked. Who would ever agree to such a thing? The answer came with the old hard logic of a people who fear annihilation more than they fear their own purity. If the village would die without heirs, sacrifice becomes duty. The council agreed. 2 elders were chosen and sent on the urgent mission. Go far, seek the great chief priest who could perform the selection of virgins and call the great river goddess of Idemili. Their footsteps left a hush over Umazu. Oloma's store remained open the next market day. Her bananas gleamed in the sun. People still ate and praised them, still blind to the bitter roots of what filled their mouths. If only they knew what they were eating. The sun rose quietly over Umuazu, painting the village roofs with lights. They calmed before a storm that would decide their fate forever. After several days of waiting, 2 elders who were sent to fetch a powerful spiritualist finally returned. Behind them walked an ancient chief priest, his body painted with white chalks and sacred marks. Cowries hung from his neck, and in his hand he held a staff carved with the image of a serpent. The crowd gathered in silence, watching with hope and fear. The chief priest raised his staff high and spoke, "Children of Umuazu, your land is cursed, and only the great river goddess of Idemili can restore life and manhood to your people. But the gods demand a price before they bless again." The words struck the people like thunder. He explained the rituals, the sacrifices, and the sacred requirements. When he mentioned the price, that 2 virgins must be offered to call upon the river goddess, a heavy silence fell. Mothers covered their daughters. Fathers shook their heads in disbelief. "No one will give their children," one of the villagers said bitterly. "We cannot shed any innocent blood." But the chief priest's boys carry the weight of destiny. "The choice is not yours, my people. The gods will choose for themselves." He stepped into the crowd and scanned the young ladies trembling in fear. After a deep chant, he lifted his staff and selected 7 virgins. Their mothers wailed, but the priest paid no attention. He handed each of them a calabash filled with water, then said, "Hold it still. The goddess will choose her own. The water that turns red will mark the chosen ones." The girls held their breath. The crowd watched in dreadful silence. Moments passed. Then suddenly, 2 of the calabashes turned red, the color of blood. The wails grew louder. "The goddess has spoken," the priest declared. "The chosen ones will open the gates between this world and hers." Far behind the crowd, Oloma stood with a small knowing smile. Her eyes gleamed with a cold satisfaction as she whispered to herself, "You can sacrifice all you want, but you'll never escape my clutches. Let me go home and rest. You'll only lose more souls." She turned and walked away, her laughter soft and chilling. At sunset, the villagers gathered at the river Idemili. Drums echoed through the valley. The air was thick with smoke and fear. The chief priest began the incantations, his chants shaking the very ground. The 2 chosen virgins stood at the river bank, tears streaking down their faces. He sacrificed them and called on the river goddess. As the priest raised his staff, the water began to swirl, rising higher and higher until a figure emerged. Half serpent, half woman, her skin glistening like silver under moonlight. Her eyes glowed with ancient fire. It was the river goddess of Idemili. "I have accepted your sacrifice," she said, her voice rumbling like thunder. "But hear me, children of Umuazu. The cause of your suffering lives among you. Bring forth the woman who sells banana in the market. She is the root of your calamity. She must join her lost children beneath this river before peace can return." The villagers gasped. The truth struck like lightning. Instantly, the youth raced to Oloma's house. She looked up from her sofa as they stormed in. "What is the meaning of this? Leave my house at once," she shouted, fear creeping into her voice. They ignored her cries. Rough hands dragged her outside as she screamed and kicked. The whole village followed them back to the riverbank. The goddess's voice echoed again. "Confess what you have done. Speak before you end." The king stepped forward, his face filled with grief and anger. "Oluoma, why? Why did you bring this destruction upon our people? What do we ever do to deserve this cruelty?" Oloma threw back her head and laughed, a sound that sent chills through every spine. "Why?" she cried, her voice cracking. "Because you deserve it. 10 years I waited for a child, and when God finally blessed me, you called my children cursed. You threw them into this very river. My innocent twins! You banished me and my husband into the forest, where a snake took his life and left me alone to die. Did you think your cruelty would go unpunished? Her laughter turned to tears. I met the angel of darkness, who showed me how to make you feel the pain I felt. Every banana you ate was your own curse. Every sweetness was a price of your wickedness returned to you. I don't care if I die now. My twins must be 23 years old now in the afterlife, and I will gladly join them. And you all snatched them away from me. I will not stop until I ruin all your lives. No single cry of a baby will be heard in Umazu ever again. The river goddess lifted her hand. You have had your revenge, Oloma. Now justice will be completed. You will join your twins in the depths. But before the goddess could act, the skies roared, darkness swallowed the moon, and a figure appeared, the angel of darkness herself, rising from the wind with eyes of fire. We are not done, river goddess of Idemili, the angel thundered. She flung a dark wave toward the goddess, but Idemili struck back with blinding light. The two powers clashed, thunder met lightning, and the river trembled violently. With one mighty strike, the goddess shattered the angel of darkness into 1,000 burning fragments that scattered into the wind. The river goddess turned to Oloma, her eyes glowing bright than the moon. Your vengeance ends here. Come and find peace with your children. She raised her arms, and the water surged forward, wrapping around Oloma like an embrace. With one final cry, Oloma was dragged into the depths of the river. The waves calmed, the wind stopped, silence covered Umuazu. The next morning, the men's manhoods were restored, and for the first time in years, the laughter of newborns returned to the village. Peace filled the air once again. The king stood before the people and made a decree. From this day forward, no twin shall ever be harmed again. Any child born in this land will be celebrated. For life, not death, brings blessings to Umuazu. The crowd erupted in joy. Mothers danced, fathers wept, children played by the river, and for the first time, the water of Idemili flowed gently, carrying no more sorrow, no more secrets. This story teaches us that vengeance may feel sweet for a moment, but it never truly brings peace. Oloma's heart found no rest until she perished in the same river that took her children. In the end, we must learn that mercy is stronger than tradition, love is greater than fear, and forgiveness is the only path that can heal a wounded soul. Thank you so much for watching, my dear viewers. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next tale. Now tell me, if you are one of the villagers of Umuazu, would you have obeyed the old tradition or stood up to protect Oloma's twins? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And don't forget to share this story with someone who loves African tales filled with mystery and powerful lessons. Bye!